Hi, this is Maheen. I'm the CEO founder of Maheen the Globe, a Seattle-based independent media company, and we cover global stories and perspectives. Today, we are doing a film and inclusion panel, or the lack of it. We've been doing a lot of research on our end, and we see that women of color and women in general, LGBTQ plus, face a lot of challenges when it comes to the Seattle film industry. There are structural barriers, there's underrepresentations, and then there's a question of affordability. We have this stellar group of filmmakers which are going to give the perspectives from the film industry by being part of the film industry. And so I could start with a round of introductions, but before that, Tessa has an interesting fact to share too as a student in Western Washington University.
Yeah, so I study theater at Western Washington University up here in Bellingham, and we pride ourselves on inclusivity. But when I think of the theater department, I can only think of one or two faculty members of color, which is a problem because we do want to produce work that elevates narratives of BIPOC, LGBTQ, immigrants.
Yes. So let's do a round of introductions, starting with Rosalie Miller.
Hello. Hi, my name is Rosalie, and I am a producer, documentary filmmaker, and a new mom.
Nice. Kim Schwarzkopf.
Hi, my name is Kim Schwarzkopf, and I'm a filmmaker, mom, and skate park advocate.
Nice. Randy Surf.
My name is Randy Surf, and I like to call myself what I consider a production Swiss Army knife.
Love it.
I love that.
All right, guys. So what we're going to do is, I have this question about inclusivity, right? But I wanted to dissect it into two parts so that it's easier for everyone to respond and for the audience to really understand as well. So when we're talking about Seattle being inclusive or not, let's talk about cast, crews, screenwriters, producers, how things are looking like from that perspective. Randy, as I can ask you first as your person of color.
I personally don't feel like there is any diversity or any inclusion in a lot of the productions I've been in. One of the largest sets that I was on was about 50 people, and there was about 2 people of color on the entire set.
Yeah.
So I don't really see that happening a lot in the Seattle industry at all. And I've been involved in this industry for years. So it's frustrating to see.
Rosalie, what would you say about that? And what do you think can be done really?
I mean, I want to add too from a gender perspective, and not to speak, I'm really trying to get out of kind of binary terms and this binary lens, but my experience too is that the majority of the key roles, are also held by men. Even in the Seattle area, there are a lot of women producers. It's interesting. I see this trend of, women holding certain roles in crew or maybe a key creative role. But in terms of, at least in some of the commercial world, who's actually writing the content, who the creative directors are, really at the helm. What I have seen in my experience is that it's predominantly white males as well. So I just, I feel it's important to add that because I do think that gender is a piece of this as well.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I am actually, Kim and I were talking about this. I am really taking a step back from the production world. So I can really only speak from my own lens, which is that of a white woman and a white woman who recently became a mother. And so I think my narrative is more along the lines of how not only is our industry not inclusive and is basically a white male boys club, and there's a lot of white women too, but there is very little space for parents that have young children. And so that's what I'm going through right now. And I've lost a lot of work opportunities and just the ability to be able to be more engaged in my own community since I've had a baby. So that's just on my mind a lot. And so I feel like I can speak to that a little bit more, but I am not as involved in the narrative and commercial community as I once was. And so I'm a lot more involved in the documentary community. So I feel like I can speak to that a little bit more. Sure. But I don't know if I answered your question.
That's okay. We'll get back to it. We'll get back
there's
to it.
There's just so much, right? Yeah. I mean, it's not that it's really that complicated. I mean, you know, and not just the Seattle industry, just the film industry as a whole. It's like purposely not inclusive.
Yeah.
You know, particularly for women of color. Like that's actually on purpose. And it's really hard. There's so many barriers already. And so, yeah, it's really built on something that is quite racist and quite misogynistic. And so I think, you know, we're all looking at these systems and we are reevaluating some of those systems right now.
Yeah, I mean, I do appreciate your honesty for calling it racist. I mean, let's call it what it is, right? Like, and see, then once we acknowledge it, we can see what we can do to really make that difference. Kim, what would you say when we think of inclusion in like cast, crew, and all that kind of stuff? You're also someone who's kind of hands-on in the production team. What are you looking at? What are you seeing? What do you think can be done?
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, we're not alone here in Seattle as far as, you know, our lack of diversity and inclusion. You know, it's across the country. And so, yeah, so when I first heard this question, I was like, our topic, what we're going to be talking about, I was like, no, well, you know, what else do we need to talk about? You know, but, you know, I have tried to think real deeply about this. And, you know, thinking about all the people that I've been working with over the years. I've been a freelance filmmaker here in Seattle for over 20 years. So I have seen some changes. I have seen more women, but as Rosalie was saying, mostly women in certain roles as producers and white women. And also to add, who's controlling the money? Where is the money coming from? You know, that's important to look at. And it is mostly white men, older men.
Right. So Randy, when I was talking to you a little earlier this morning, you kind of talked about your own experiences being in the production team as well, and how things were, and you shared some interesting facts. I thought it was nice if you could just bring it up here in the panel.
Well, in this film industry in general, there are just like not a lot of opportunities for women of color. Like we said earlier, the production is pretty much just a male-dominated industry. One of the things that I've had to overcome and I've really had to do is prove myself in this industry. So let's see, I started in 2000 and maybe 12 or 13 and was not able to find a single opportunity, even though I had done some schooling and gotten a certificate in it, still wasn't able to find anything. Went back to school, graduated in 2017, and still have not really been offered anything. I mean, I'm not sure if the opportunities just aren't out there because of the film industry in Seattle, or if those doors just aren't open for me. That's kind of one thing that I'm still trying to figure out. But you know, I'm a part of different groups and like women in film, and I've been to some of their meetings, and this has been an ongoing topic.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is at least it's being talked about. And, you know, I think conversations are important. Once they happen, you know, we can then go towards like solutions of sorts, right? So now my second part of the question really is about the storytelling that happens in movies, whether it's like documentary filmmaking or elsewhere. What are these narratives? Are we elevating the narratives of the underrepresented communities? Are there more LGBTQ plus stories out there? Are there more women's stories out there? Are there more BIPOC stories? And for those who don't know, BIPOC is basically brown, Black, people of color, indigenous, all of these. So Rosalie, I can start with you.
Okay. Yay! No. Wow, I have a lot of feels about this. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely moving more into the storytelling aspect of this industry. So I'm a documentary filmmaker, and, everything that you just said, I am sure, right? Like I am seeing those stories. I think the two things that are being brought up even more so now, it's authorship and it's accountability. And, I think traditionally, even in the documentary world where, social justice is promoted constantly, I think for every filmmaker, no matter what, we have our own bias. It's like when you walk into a room and you place a camera in a room, there is an incredible amount of power in that. So you're already creating sort of this imbalance of power just as a storyteller behind the camera in that sense. And so it's just something I've been thinking a lot about because it's quite tricky. And then there is this other thing, which is getting really honest and introspective and just having these more kind of nuanced conversations and critiques about authorship and accountability, making sure that it's not just white filmmakers, specifically white male filmmakers, illuminating communities that they aren't necessarily a part of. And I think that's what is been happening for a really long time. And so that's where we're all coming together and having these conversations. And I also think it's about, at the end of the day, like your core values and really holding yourself accountable, which is, it sounds good on paper. It's really tough. Yeah. Especially when you are looking through a lens where you've had a certain amount of privilege. Like I have privilege, I guess that's not really the right word, but like I have, what's the word I'm looking for? Like obviously I have privilege because I am a white filmmaker, but I have benefited from that privilege. Yeah. So it's like, I don't know, it's just so, it's like all of this, it's just complex in that, yes, we have to hold ourselves accountable, but what does that mean? Right. And so it's just like, I don't have the answer. I have more questions than answers right now. And, I think it's just also realizing that we all have these preconceived notions of gender and race and these cultural institutions, and it's all really pervasive and it's happening underneath our nose and we may not see it front and center. And so I think that authorship and accountability are two things that are really being discussed in the documentary community. And, to kind of go back to what we were all talking about and what Randy was saying about feeling like she had little to no opportunity, and that question mark of whether or not, is it because I'm a Black woman in this industry? Or is it just because there isn't a lot of opportunity here, maybe in the Seattle scene? It's like two sides of the same coin. If we don't have that diversity behind the camera, then you're not going to see those stories and see those voices really being reclaimed, right, in those narratives in front of the camera. So it's two sides. It goes both ways. And so that's something that I'm certainly thinking about a lot.
Yeah. And a lot of my friends who are people of color, who are actors, also talk about typecasting and all of that happens. And, that's why they're so limited in terms of, so everything's like kind of connected, storytelling, whose story are we telling? What kind of, if we're not telling enough people of color or LGBTQ plus stories, we're not going to have those kind of cast either. That's how I see it. Kim, how would you describe, Rosalie, you were saying?
No, I was just saying, I don't want to sound like all doom and gloom, and like Randy and Kim, please jump in here. But yeah. I just wanted to bring up like one example. Have you guys seen the television show Pose?
Yes.
That's so good. But that is a really good example. You know, it's like, we never would have seen a show like that 10 years ago. And that's like, you know, I'm talking like kind of Hollywood, you know what I mean? Like, and not necessarily focusing as much on the Seattle filmmaking or television scene. But those are stories that, so, you know, that are happening, and we are seeing that shift and that change. I mean, never would we have seen lead Black transgender actresses, you know what I mean, at the helm of a show like this, and being nominated for Emmys, and like, it's pretty incredible. So anyways, and so when you put that out there, you know, I mean, I watched that show with my dad, who's like, you know, a 68-year-old white dude from West Virginia, and we're having conversations about the transgender community, you know, like, it's just, you know, when it's good, it helps bridge those gaps and creates this kind of dialogue. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there as an example of something good that I am seeing.
Yeah, awesome. Kim, what would you say about that?
Well, I was thinking this might be a good time to talk about Who Am I, Randy, the film that you produced just recently. That's just beautiful visual poem. Oh. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
It is beautiful.
Well, I just wanted to say that I think that in light of what's going on in the world, I think that some companies are trying to be more inclusive and kind of balance out some of the people that they have on their staff and some of the messages that they're putting out there. And they're all like starting to hold themselves accountable. That's what I really think is happening. As far as Who Am I? Well, I was going to talk about that later. Because there was actually some things in the next question that was going to lead into.
Yes, exactly. That's okay. Yeah, all right. So Randy, yeah, let's just go by our script. I wanted to, Randy, ask you about the pandemic. And, you know, you kind of talked about, you know, how it's been tough, but it's also kind of a moment to shine for you during the pandemic. And tell us about all the work that you did during this time. And of course, we'll get to Who Am I right then.
So the pandemic, well, the pandemic has been very interesting for me. It has opened some doors, but it's also closed some. While the pandemic was happening, or during the height of the pandemic, I was actually on set filming something. And because, you know, film wasn't considered essential, my film got shut down. So I sat at home like everybody for months. But I joined this Who Am I project. So I had a director reach out to me and ask me like, hey, would you like to be a part of this passion project that we're doing? And, you know, after I read the script, after I read the message and who it was going to be supporting, I just was kind of all in with this project. And that's kind of one thing that I want to encourage other people to do during this pandemic is get together with your friends, you know, work on some projects, you know, write a script, write a poem, write a play, get your friends together and film that kind of stuff, you know, and that's what Who Am I was. So yeah, that's like what I want people to do. Get together with your friends. Oh, someone's coming in my house. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So Randy, I have another question about Who Am I? Because me and Tessa watched it and we were just like blown away. We're like, this is so amazing. And we're going to do some screenings of it as well with some different groups. Tell us, for people who haven't watched it, let's just create some kind of a visual depiction. What was the concept really?
So Who Am I is inspired by the Langston Hughes poem, I Too Am America. What we're doing with the Who Am I funds is we're donating them to two Black-led grassroots organizations from the Seattle area. With the Who Am I film, we wanted to use our voices to speak on Black art. There's way more types of Black art than just painting. You know, there are rappers, there are producers, there are actual painters. There are so many different types of artists, and we just wanted to showcase all of them in the work that they do in this film. So we connected with artists from the Seattle area, all the way up from North Seattle down to Tacoma, and got them together for this visual poem.
It's awesome. It's awesome. Yeah. So let's get to our next part of stuff, like our latest projects. What is everyone working on and all of that kind of stuff. Rosalie, Tessa had a couple of questions regarding that to you about your projects. I think it's the LGBTQ plus narrative that you're elevating with Chardonna. So Tessa, go ahead, ask Rosalie a question.
Yeah, how did you get connected with Shardana or Jody? And what inspired you to document her life? Because it's just really interesting.
Let's see, because it's been many years. I was working on, I was producing Personhood at the time when I started it in 2016. But, let's see, I came to Seattle in 2011. I'm just trying to think of the timeline. Yeah, and I was introduced to Jody's work. She is a contemporary dancer. She's also a performance artist. And her work has really evolved over the years, even like during the making of this film. But I was introduced to Worth My Salt, which was like her first solo show years ago. And I just really fell in love with it. And I thought her work was so different. And I've just been a fan. And I was in the like knee deep in producing Personhood. We had been traveling all around the United States. And I think I was just in this time of really needing to kind of work on something in a different way creatively. And, with my work, I just really, I feel very strongly about it being very women-centered. And and I just reached out to her because I really wanted to just meet her and I wanted to have a conversation with her. So in a way, I was interviewing her. She was kind of interviewing me.
And I just wanted to interject and say that she's queer. So for people who don't know the filmmaker, not the filmmaker, the character who Rosalie documented the life for. So go ahead, Rosalie.
So we had a great conversation, and originally it was just going to be kind of a documentation of her follow-up show. So her kind of sophomore show to Worth My Salt that she was working on or had just started working on. So it was really supposed to just be a really short piece. And then like so much of documentary filmmaking, life just kind of happened and it evolved from there. And I'm still working on it. And that was in 2016, but that's nothing. I've like been on films for years and years and years and years, I guess. But yeah, so, that's really how it started. And then it has really evolved since then. And, it's interesting with the pandemic and just thinking about the role of art and how we all really lean into art a lot when we are in crisis and we're all kind of, we're experiencing this collective isolation together. And that is, I think there's a real weight on artists that's what they do for a living, is that they are like creating something for an audience and they're giving and giving and giving. And for Jody and her work, she needs, she needs like space and an audience in person, like it's part of the work. And she doesn't have that right now. And so that has really dramatically shifted her life and her work. So we are actually having a lot of conversations about that. So there's been a little shift, I think, in the narrative because of the pandemic, and just talking about the importance of art and how a lot of artists are really suffering right now during this time. But yes, she is a queer femme performance artist and she's beautiful and amazing. And I just feel really lucky to be working on this piece. So.
Thanks, Rosalie. So Kim, I wanted to ask you about Across the Bridge and the hashtag you use a lot, Increase the Peace. For those who don't know, tell us what that's all about.
Sure. Well, my mission for my whole adult life, at least, has been to help build a healthy community. And that's kind of turned into this hashtag that I've been using, hashtag Increase the Peace. And it's about, thinking about peace, because it's something that I've never talked about actually as a young person. And, what is it? What does it really mean? And what does it take to have a sustainable peace? So it's like not just about disarmament. We need economic justice too. We need, human rights and democracy. We need to consider the environment. and conflict resolution, like all of these things. So, you know, as I just was thinking more and more about peace and, you know, what that is, I started thinking about mentorship and opportunities and how that really can reduce violence, like, and, you know, within ourselves, like within our families, our schools, our communities. And I was producing a commercial at the time with Zachy Rose, and started talking to Ricardo about mentorship. And he's like, you know, we both ran across the same initiative, mentorship program initiative, Seattle Youth Violence Prevention Initiative. Mm-hmm. And we're like, hey, okay, let's do this. You know music, I know film, like, let's just put a program together. And within a couple of weeks, it started out as a program, 6-week program where we went on field trips and brought in artists, guest artists to speak with the young people. And the name came from actually, you know, just the fact that a lot of these young people in Southwest Seattle didn't feel safe even going across the bridge to downtown Seattle. And I was like, oh gosh, I can help with that. That's something I can do. So that's how it started 6 years ago. And then we've evolved over the years, and we're more of now really an all ages crew of creatives. And we try to, you know, get involved and plug into all these different, the whole ecosystem in Seattle, and yeah, we've got lots of ideas. But our last thing was being a part of Northwest Folklife for their cultural focus, which was Youth Rising. And the young people came together and came up with an idea to create a media platform for young people to connect, artists to connect. So.
Yeah, awesome. Well, now we're going to just share our afterthoughts, really, because typically we do a 30-minute panel. It's just going a little over because these conversations are so amazing. I think what I want to know is that what you all can do as filmmakers to form alliances or solidarity or help give opportunities to LGBTQ plus people of color. Like, what can be done? I mean, I'm just asking a question because I don't know how it all works. So maybe I can start with Randy, who is a person of color, if she has any suggestions, or what do you think needs to be done, really?
You know, I'm still trying to figure out what can be done myself. But for anybody who is a young filmmaker out there who is trying to be seen in this pandemic, what I would recommend is to take advantage of what you can right now. So right now, production companies aren't flying out full crews because of everything going on. So I would say take advantage of that. Production companies are not flying out crews, meaning they're hiring more local people. So put yourself out there, put your catalog out there. There's a lot of people that are afraid to put their projects out there because they're afraid of what people are going to say. But that's what you need. You need that feedback. You need that input. So I would say just put yourself out there. Put yourself out there on Facebook. Join the Northwest Call Board. Join Production Peeps. There's groups and lots of endless opportunities out there. You just have to go out there and find them and make them yours.
Yes, Randy. Rosalie?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. I'm used to having a 2-year-old like screaming in the background. So I always have the mute button on. You know, I feel the same way Randy does. I'm like, I'm still trying to figure it out too. You know, Worth My Salt is in post-production right now. That's the film that I was just talking about Jodie Keener and her work. And, you know, one thing that I am really adamant about doing on this particular film is making sure that my post team, my producers included, you know, are women and women of color and people that are part of the LGBTQ community. No men. So seriously, I just like, you know, it's something that I feel pretty fervent about. And I've learned a lot working on personhood on my other feature-length documentary for 7 years, and learned a lot from those women and just those communities. And I'm still learning. And yeah, I just feel like I have more questions than I do answers right now. But that I feel like everyone, like Randy said, everyone can do something. Like you can wake up in the morning, put one foot in front of you and do something. You know, so I am trying to do more of that and be really hyper aware of the projects that I am working on and who I am sitting beside on those projects. And, you know, and I realize that sometimes it's not possible for everything to be perfect in that way, because we have to keep a roof over our head and food in the fridge, and, you know, we got to pay the rent. But if you can, you know, yeah, I think it's just being really mindful and getting really introspective about it. So anyways, that's one thing that I'm doing right now.
Awesome. Kim?
Here. Well, just trying to listen more and to make space for people and everyone. And yeah, I'm trying to help, you know, weave together all of these stories, and also like really seeking out like other BIPOC filmmakers to connect with. So really happy to connect with you, Randy. And then also, you know, with all this time at home, you know, a lot of film festivals are online. So I've been trying to support every film festival, you know, that I can, especially local, like the Social Justice Film Festival, where I actually got to watch Personhood, which is awesome. And other, yeah, and some other stories since I've been down by Tacoma filmmakers.
Yeah.
Amazing story. Yeah, so yeah, that's, you know, just trying to figure out, you know, my own story really too. You know, this is like, I'm trying to figure out my own story, my own identity. You know, I've got a lot of internalized racism and sexism going on and I'm trying to get through it all, you know.
Well, I really wanted to thank you all for your honesty today. And we're just scratching the surface. I know it's like a lot we covered, but we're going to do a series of inclusion in film and kind of see what we can do to make things better or connect the people. You know, sometimes it's just connection, right? Access of people of color, of LGBTQ plus with the white community and so on and so forth. So thank you all. This was brave.
Thank you, Maheen.
Yeah,
and Tessa.
Thank you.
And Randy, it was so nice to meet you.
Yeah.
So nice
Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you.
Bye, guys.
Yeah, thank you all. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, same here. Bye.
Bye.